Hey, I'm Greg Schaefer, and welcome to the Virtual CISO Moment. Samuel Hill joins us today. He is the product marketing manager for Cyolo Security, where they
Nailed
create
it.
one unified, thank you, where they create one unified platform that enables users to access all applications, servers, desktops, and files within an organization securely and with ease. He is skilled at helping orchestrate and integrate critical device security, and also provides resilient IT strategies, supportive security ecosystems, and process integrity across industrial, extended Internet of Things, and a commercial cyber physical systems. That's a lot to say. Samuel, thank you so much for joining us today.
Greg, it is an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
So would love to hear about your cyber journey. I know it's a little bit unique, at least how you got into it and why you got into it and what led you to where you're at today.
I think most people could look at their career journey and see, I kind of fell into some things and wanted to go into other things, but a lot of it's based off of relationship and people But I did get my start as an emergency room technician. Kind of my first adult job was working in the ER. And so I have wonderful stories that I love to tell. They're usually best shared over drinks in a private, non-recorded setting. So we'll spare the audience today, but they're a lot of fun. You learn a lot working in the emergency room. I mean, a lot of skills that are very applicable to cybersecurity in a lot of ways too. So after that, I made the pivot into the technology realm. Started off in like sales associate roles, into sales management roles, and then now into product marketing. So I think that breadth of experience gives me a kind of unique perspective on cybersecurity. I've seen it from an end user's perspective on the front lines of healthcare, and into how do we help organizations best pivot and manage their adoption of better ways of doing business and that kind of thing.
So what was the reason for pivoting from healthcare to cybersecurity?
I don't know, kind of like out of the frying pan into the fire, because when you work in the front lines of healthcare, as we've all seen over the last few years, it is a stressful, tough job. And so now I work in cybersecurity. Hey, also a stressful, tough job. Weird. But at the same time, it really was something that allowed me to spend more time with my family, to better provide for them, and have a bigger career path where I could grow my skills, my talent, and my leadership abilities.
And what is it now that you're doing at Cyolo?
So I lead the product marketing team. And so my job is to take the very technical ways that we solve unique challenges and help translate them to customers and potential customers into the market at large. So I work primarily with our product teams, our marketing teams, and our sales organization to best insert our message and communicate effectively across different channels.
And what is your client base typically? What vertical, what size businesses, or is it just all across the board?
It is kind of all across the board. We have focused in on a couple of different verticals. One in the insurance and financial services industry, manufacturing, critical infrastructure, and then healthcare would be another one. But a lot of the places that we've seen a lot of success are, small businesses that say, I have a unique problem that I'm not happy with how it's being solved today. And we're able to pretty quickly help them get to a resolution.
Okay, well, we're going to take just a very short break for our sponsor who pays our bills. And then when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about threats to small and mid-sized businesses. vCISO Services is a small, specialized, veteran-owned information security firm with a calling, founded on Christian values and focused on the needs of small and mid-sized businesses. Our passion is to help small and mid-sized businesses gain a fighting chance in an increasingly hostile cybersecurity threat environment by providing executive part-time virtual CISO services, information security risk management services, and CISO advisory services. Check them out at vcisoservices.com. All right, so I know that there's a lot of commonality threats across the board from small and large size businesses. Right now, one of the bigger ones that's at least gaining some traction in the media is about the Move IT or Move It, depending upon how you want to pronounce it.
Tomato.
Issues. Tomato. Yeah. And it affects small businesses as well as much the big thing about the federal government now also having been affected by it, which is not too much of a surprise. But given all that, what would you say is probably one of the most significant threats, one or more threats to small and mid-sized businesses today?
I think this threat, I'm going to answer this question in a unique way, hopefully a unique way, Greg. I think that the threat is actually decreasing as awareness is becoming more common. I think one of the biggest threats to small, medium businesses is executive and organizational buy-in around the need for cybersecurity.
Hmm.
When you have, founders of small companies or medium companies, or the executive leadership team who they're experts in their core competency of running the business, of operating whatever it is that's bringing revenue to the company, whatever that service or good or thing is, that's their expertise. And so it's easy for their confirmation bias or whatever their background is to, force them to think in ways that are not necessarily cyber secure. And so having awareness of the major issues. I mean, obviously, yes, Move IT, Volt Typhoon was targeting critical infrastructure that I think the Chinese backed, state sponsored, communication breach kind of thing. That
Hmm.
applies to small, medium businesses too. That's not necessarily just a large company problem. None of them really are. They're all across the board problems. But the awareness, I think, is something that is, I'm starting to see it change a little bit. We're starting to see executives and leadership teams take it more seriously, which is encouraging. But I would say that's one of the larger threats to the small and mid-sized business.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that it's changing and that they're actually finally after? I know as a former CISO and now a virtual
Right.
CISO, it's like
Mhm.
I spend a lot of time trying to get the message in and to finally hear the view that it's actually getting through. Why do you think that is?
Well, this is going to sound terrible, but it's really good that the bad guys are so good because they're finally getting
Mhm.
news attention, right? Like when you're in the big trade presses and when you're in the big, business publications and they're talking about, these really critical things, they have no idea that the semantics of the Move IT breach, like the fact that it's, the data file transfer stuff, like they have no idea. But they do say, wow, is this a problem? Could this be a problem for us? Will this impact my business? And now they're at least asking that question. And so then security leaders, like yourself in your history and others like you, they can now come in and say, yes, this could be an issue for us. Here's my plan to mitigate it. Or, by the way, I do need some more funding, or we might need to do this, or this might need to be a strategy change for us. But now that conversation is happening at a business level. And it's just because the proliferation has gotten to the point. When a problem gets big enough, eventually, you start working on it. If it's just kind of left in the low simmer, sometimes problems tend to be ignored. And unfortunately, that's been the reality. But I think that's changing.
Well, sometimes with CISOs, we have the problem, if you will, of once we've gotten the ear, we're like, well, we're never have this opportunity again. So I'm just going to dump everything in and say, I want these 15 things, and it's going to cost you $5 million and all that. How can we restrain ourselves? Maybe is a good way to say it.
Oh my goodness. I mean, as you know, it all starts with the relationships that you build across not only your peers, but also the others that are, on the ELT and the board members and those folks. Because you're right. Once you get that opportunity to say, you're in the spotlight, if you will, and
Hmm.
you're making an ask.
You only get
As a
one
business.
shot, it looks like right now at this point in time,
Yeah,
right?
right. And I think that is, the restraint as a leader to say, if you've done, and you probably have, you've done your homework, the gaps, the priorities, what your roadmap looks like from a security architecture with your people, process, and technology. And then you can say, of this list, my top is X, whatever X is on your list. It could be headcount. It could be a specific threat hunting tool. Oh, gosh, fill in the blank. But whatever that X is, that's your chance to say, and then obviously follow it with, here's our project plan, here's the delivery we're going to have, and you're going to expect to see these results because that's what those folks care about. And then, you might get the ear again.
So it sounds like that probably a good strategy would be to ensure that you're talking in the language of the C-suite and the board of directors, not in the language of information security and cybersecurity.
It is tough because so that's what I look at this from the perspective of I work with incredibly brilliant cybersecurity founders, and these
Hmm.
people have spent their entire careers working in the command line, and they know far more about technical stuff that I will ever possibly understand in my life. But my job is to translate what they do, what they have accomplished, into something that others can understand. And really that's very true. I think of the CISO role is, you understand the technical details in some places. Not all CISOs are technical experts, and nor should they be. But
Hmm.
able to translate what is happening not only in your infrastructure but the world at large. And as an expert, here are the critical threats to our business, and let me translate what we can do as a business to lower that risk. It is a translation job. It really is.
Do you think you mentioned that you don't have to be a technical CISO, but a lot are. Is being a technical CISO an advantage or a detriment, or does it not really affect being able to facilitate that translation?
Well, I mean, CISOs comes in all different shapes and sizes, and some of them came up to the technical ranks, and that's fantastic. But even
Mhm,
within security, there are such multidisciplinary skills within cybersecurity. So if they came up through the ranks, through identity and access management, that was their technical specialty. Are they going to be experts on firewalls? Are they going to be experts on, network access control? Maybe they'll have some adjacent knowledge, but their expertise might lie in one discipline. So they're still going to have to, execute or lead as an executive to
mhm,
collaborate with experts to get subject
mhm,
matter expertise from their team and be able to translate that. So I would say those that have risen through the ranks, they're already leaning on others who have different disciplinary strength than they came up with. And also, things change. As you know, the industry is continuously evolving, and the skills that
yeah.
you may have had 10 years ago, there might be some really good approaches to it today that are different than what you learned. So for that reason, I don't necessarily think CISOs have to be technical experts. It obviously helps to have a technical acumen, and you can learn, and the ability to grow. But what I think what really separates is the ability to ask great questions, to formulate clear thoughts and translate complex ideas into simple ways of, here's our strategy. Let's move the business forward.
Yeah, and that's a good point because I look at my history. I've been doing this since I guess I started part-time as a student assistant in '89, so it's been a few
Mhm.
years.
Yep.
And the technology and in some ways the threats have changed. There wasn't such a thing as
Sure.
cybersecurity back in '89, '90. But the translation of technical needs to the business unit really has been the same all this time. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, I can see that. You don't necessarily, and sometimes even being a technical CISO, it's like, I like to say I lost red button privilege, being able to reboot a box. I lost that like, 15 years ago, and they wouldn't let me near it anymore because I became too much of an admin guy. So
Right.
what if you could talk a little bit, if you would mind, a little bit about what Cielo does, because
Yeah.
I'm somewhat familiar, but let's just go
Sure.
from a high level of what it does, what you guys do.
Yeah. Absolutely. So every organization has a scenario. It'll be unique to them, but they have a scenario where user access to something could cause enormous damage to their business. And
Mhm.
what that thing is going to be unique. It could be, source code in a DevOps environment. It could be a manufacturing line for some process system. It could be, protected information or classified or confidential information, IP, whatever that is, whatever user access could cause enormous damage. That's where we want to step in and help provide the level of control that many CISOs don't feel they have over those interactions. Because at the core, you have a user who's accessing something, and that something could be very dangerous to the business, and that user could be very dangerous to the business. Ciolo is the zero trust access methodology that helps CISOs feel a lot better about granting that access or enabling users to do things that they may not be fully comfortable with. So we were founded by a CISO. He was the first CISO of the Israeli Navy and then went into private industry. And he kind of kept looking for a tool that could help broker that for his specific, this was the kind of problem for him. He had a problem where he knew if he went to his board and said, I'm going to buy a tool to solve this problem, the board would immediately release funds. That's how big a problem it was.
Mhm.
And so he
Yeah.
needed a tool, couldn't find it. And so he partnered with some ethical hackers and then built the Ciolo platform. So we call ourselves Zero Trust Access. So we authorize and identify every single user, no matter where they're coming from, even if they're a third party or an external contractor. We want to make sure we limit anything and everything they can connect to only what is allowed, and then monitor all of the details of that transaction as it's happening.
So it's very granular role-based access, it almost sounds like.
It is, yeah. If you want to call it application-based access or RBAC, all whatever, or
Okay.
attribute-based, all those different layers that you want to put into that, that's all a part of it. The other thing that we would like to make sure we say is that we do all of the kind of the identification and access management that you would expect, the password management, the privileged access management, but also the routing and transport. So
Mhm.
Ciolo we can be a cloud service where we have a cloud routing tool that can send traffic to wherever you need it in the world. It
Like
is
a
never
Casby?
decrypted. Not like a CASB, more like a ZTNA. It'd probably be the thing that you would think most
Okay.
commonly there. It would be more, but in a lot of ZTNAs, they will decrypt traffic in that routing process in order to do some of the things they do. We never decrypt. We just route it on to the local access controller, which is placed near things. And then that traffic is terminated and then entitled and made sure that everything is happy. You're all happy with it, whatever the policies and procedures you've put in place are, that they're abided by. And then the connection is made into that thing. So we shine best in like really difficult scenarios, legacy infrastructure, critical infrastructure, highly sensitive source code environments, places where it really is a struggle to make sure you have the right controls in place.
So I've indicated that I've been in the industry for
Yeah.
some time, and I've seen acronyms come and go all over
Yeah.
the place. And I've come to the conclusion where I'm old enough and I don't care enough anymore to admit that sometimes acronyms kind of throw me. And if it
Totally.
throws me, it probably throws some other folks out there too. So can you just at a very high level explain what was it, ZTNA?
Certainly. Yeah. So ZTNA stands for Zero Trust Network Access.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is it's a coined by Gartner. It's a term that basically refers to a category of technology solutions that are helping to eliminate, most commonly eliminate a VPN, a virtual private network, kind of that VPN connectivity into stuff. And so it has routing capabilities. So it could take a remote worker, route their traffic to either a cloud application or something on site or a hybrid environment. And it's doing all of that. And it's performing entitlement. It's looking at who is this user? What are they? Do we know who they are? Let's make sure that it's getting there effectively and efficiently. So that's kind of the routing component of it too. Couple that with the need for identity and access management. IAM would be another acronym to throw out there.
No,
Which is how do we?
the other ones are kind of standard. So,
Gotcha. Okay, good. Okay. And you're right. It is easy just to throw letters around and think they mean something, but defining terms. So where I think Cyolo shines is we like to say, let's not give you access to the network. It's zero trust network access, because we don't want to give you network access. Once you're there, we've seen that across a lot of attack vectors. The bad guys just move left, right, up, down, wherever
once
they want
they're
to go.
in. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just give zero trust access to whatever that specific thing is that they need to do their job.
Okay. Well, that makes perfect sense. And I'm sure that cleared up a lot for other folks as well as me. I was guessing in my head what it was, and I was pretty close. I didn't have the A right. So,
okay.
But one of the things with being in cyber, as you kind of touched on before, and certainly, and you kind of hit this too when you were in the medical field, is that it can be a very stressful environment. And I very much am an evangelist for folks to get away from it, step away from it, because if you don't, you're going to burn yourself out. If I hadn't done that, I still wouldn't be doing this 30 odd years later. What is one thing that you do to help decompress?
I live in a part of the world where it is just an absolute joy to be outside. I live in Bozeman, Montana, and I love to spend time hiking and skiing and camping and all of the things. In fact, just this last weekend, I got back from a trip to Western North Dakota with my family and our travel trailer, where we just did nothing but sit around and explore small towns and eat good food and hang out. We went to Teddy Roosevelt National Park is one of the places we got to go to. And just driving around and seeing just the absolute wonder that is one of the most beautiful places on earth, the Badlands of North Dakota. That is one way, just as an example, one way to decompress that I do to decompress from the grind that is everyday life. And so as a cybersecurity leader, first I want to say to those people, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. And we're grateful that you have remained in the fight and that you are continuing to lead and to serve and to do your best by your business and the people that you lead. All that is just, we're grateful for that. And second is we need you to stay in the fight. So what is that for you? What are those moments that you can find to collect yourself, to find yourself and not just the role that you're playing at work? And for me, I like to go outside with my kids. Like this winter, we spent a ton of time skiing, and you should see my little kids just ripping down the mountain, man. It is an absolute joy to watch them grow and try. And, my son's like, let's go to the terrain park, Dad. And like, you and I might have different ideas of what a good time is on the mountains. You have fun, man. This is going to be great. But finding those things, whatever that is for you, it's very important.
You know, you brought up a really good point about just sort of like breathing and like seeing things around you. And so I just wanted to share that like
Yeah.
yesterday, I'm coming back from Indiana to Tennessee. I was doing business up there, and I could
Hmm.
have driven on the interstate and made it in 2.5 hours, but I did almost completely back roads, stopped off at a
Mm,
state park, stopped off at a
yeah.
real little diner to eat. Took me about 5.5 hours, but I just totally enjoyed the experience. And it was very calming as opposed to like
Yeah.
being on an interstate and having to get there. You know, it's like you're almost like trying to beat your previous record and all
Yeah.
that. It's like,
Yeah.
so I hear you.
There's place for that, right? Obviously, there's, if you work in cyber, you're probably a little competitive, you're probably a little driven. So there's find avenues for that too, right? Like,
Right.
I go to the local gym and I do try and beat my scores. I do try and, improve. But at the same time, like those moments when you do nothing, and small town diners, overrated. I'm sorry, not underrated. Like the
Underrated.
best
Yeah.
meals, underrated. Yeah. Like you're going to find a great meal. You're going to find wonderful conversation. Like talk to a local. Like I remember one time we
Oh,
stopped in the small town and like the local farmers were just talking about the weather. And I'm like, this is awesome.
yeah, and that's exactly what this place was. It was a little place in Crofton, Kentucky, and
Yeah.
they had just baked like an apple
Oh,
pie, and I had that for dessert. I mean, it was so fresh; it was still steaming. I'm
oh,
like,
come on.
you can't get this anywhere else. I don't know how much I
Yeah.
paid for it. I think the total bill was like $15 for a burger, fries, and pie and drink. It was
Yeah.
like, wow, you can't beat that anywhere. So,
Yeah.
but well, all right. What kind of future plans you got coming down in the future?
I so the reason I moved into kind of the marketing side of our business in my career in past roles was because I wanted to stretch my own organizational wings, if you will, and the ability
Hmm.
to kind of grow my ability. So I earned my master's degree in organizational and strategic leadership. So I'm not sure what the future holds, whether it's within specific companies or within cybersecurity still. I like to think that I'm a specialist in helping translate these brilliant cybersecurity founders and their technical details into um, easy to communicate messages that customers and prospects and venture capital can understand. So I think that's going to be a part of my future. I'd love to see, that kind of expanding and growing and more and more responsibility laid on the shoulders, and we'll see where that goes. Cause I think that like, I don't know, the uniqueness that I can bring is something that is just myself. And that's where I like to shine. And so hopefully we'll see where that takes us.
Awesome. Well, Samuel, thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed the conversation. Some great advice there, and I hope you're right that the executive buy-in is increasing in security. We'll see how that goes, but I'm going to hold you to that.
Let's hope. Yeah, let's hope.
Okay.